Sarah.
Hello, Annabelle.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good.
What's on your mind for this episode?
Well, how do I open this one up? The title of this episode is going to give it away. So the title of today's episode is Classical Rep We Love to Hate.
Ooh.
From a perspective of classical musicians, right? There's just those pieces out there that if it will get people... I'm already shaking my head. You can't see it, but I'm shaking my head or I'm rolling my eyes at some of these. And I want to talk about why these musicians feel this way about these pieces.
Yeah.
So is there any piece of music you can think of where you just sort of just react like almost viscerally?
Yeah, like you, I don't want to seem too mean-spirited about it, but there are pieces that come up which general audience members absolutely love. Like, it's just part of their DNA. They love it so much. And then a grumpy old classical musician will come up and say, "Oh God, not New World Symphony again." This, and that's not on my list, by the way. I love that piece.
I didn't even think of that one.
Well, that's a classic. That's
Yeah.
that comes up more than once a year. In fact,
Absolutely.
sometimes 3 or 4 times a year.
Wow.
And that's a lot. And why? Why that symphony? There's so many other symphonies written. So that's also, we get a bit annoyed, like, why is this piece coming up again? What's one of yours?
Okay, I have 2 parts to my list, but the 2 that I have that reaction to, the top of that list will forever be Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance. I cannot stand that piece, but it's only the slow march.
Oh,
is what I roll.
Wash your mouth
The
out.
other part is really fun.
Land of Hope and Glory. You have no... Oh.
No, that is where I'm like, because it's just been used and abused by people at their graduation ceremonies. It's just like, ugh. And the other one is Concerto for Orchestra by Bartók, which I detest. I've played it twice or a lot, I don't know. And I spent so much time learning it, and I was just miserable playing it. So that's just sort of,
Okay, so look, that's interesting because Bartók is a kind of polarizing composer. It's a completely different language from, say, your Brahms and your Beethoven and all of that. So, it's probably a familiarity problem. It's unpredictable to your brain and it takes a lot of work to learn it. So, yeah, I get that about Bartók
But I've
too.
played other Bartók and listened to other Bartók that I really love. So for
okay.
me, it's that piece.
All right.
But the other parts of my list are pieces like Beethoven 5 and Bach G Major Prelude, Saint-Saëns the Swan, and stuff like Vivaldi's Four Seasons. I love all of those pieces. But if talk to a cellist and you say, "Oh, I love that one piece of that one piece by Bach," and they will roll their eyes and they'll know exactly what one you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's other pieces of Bach for solo cello which are stunning, but that one is just like, like the Bach E Major Prelude. It's
For
just sort of
violin,
for
yeah.
violin. So I feel like the pieces that gets musicians' eyes rolling is all the ones that have now been commercialized.
Yes, the ones that get overdone, the ones that are household names in a way. People,
Dun, dun,
everyone.
dun, dun.
Yeah, exactly. And so that, I guess we shouldn't be too grumpy about that because at least it means that some classical music is instantly recognizable to non-musicians out there. So that's kind of cool. But I wanted to talk about an equivalent. You know how you said you don't like Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra, but you like other Bartók. I feel
Yeah.
exactly the same way about Benjamin Britten's Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra. I cannot stand that piece. I can't stand it. But ask any one of my colleagues, Benjamin Britten is my favourite composer. Every other thing he wrote, I'm just in love. I love it.
Really?
Yeah. So it must be something about Concerto for Orchestra format that we don't like or something. Because they, the Bartók Concerto for Orchestra, Britten's Young Person's Guide, I just don't like it. And I don't have a rational reason for it either.
So, I mean, I've been this person where I'm like questioning why are these pieces, why are they commercialized and they're really great and that's great and they're popular. And then it's like whenever I see any video on like Instagram or on Facebook of, it's meant to be sort of just any video, say like a cellist playing, and I don't even have to have the sound on. I'm going, they're playing the Swan. They're playing the Swan. Like, come on, guys. There's other music for cello. It's a great piece. It's beautiful, but and anything else. And I've been that person as well. It's just like, oh, come on, you know.
I guess-
then my friend Lewis, he plays cello, and I'll just say to him, play the Bach, play the Bach. I love it so much. Play, and he'll just be like, nah. So
Yeah.
you know, why do we classical musicians
react so
I mean,
viciously towards music that's really quite pleasant.
yeah.
It's not hurting anyone. In fact, arguably, it's doing a lot of good in the world
Like
to
listen
play.
to Spring by in the Four Seasons.
Oh, well, that's one of my love to hate pieces, actually. Sorry.
yeah. So why do you love to hate it?
Well, the Four Seasons have been played like to death.
And in every kind of arrangement for every instrument.
And with every kind of interpretation, it's almost like the Vivaldi's Four Seasons are a clean slate for people to smear their personality all over. And again, it's great. You know, everyone recognises it. So if it's on a concert program, general public get very excited about it because it is a really exciting piece. It's beautiful. It's so programmatic before program music. You know, it's great. I have to admit that it's great, but it's been used and used and used and used totally out of context as well. I was watching Chef's Table, and as you know, the part of the Four Seasons is used as the theme music for Chef's Table. If anyone's seen Chef's Table, it's probably the greatest food show that's ever been made, except for the theme music. So you've got Vivaldi's Four Seasons but the reimagined version by Max Richter, which sounds exactly the same as Four Seasons. So you've got that in the opening, and then I watched this one episode recently about this incredible chef from Berlin. So you've got this Italian Baroque music all through this episode, and it's talking about this ultra edgy chef from Berlin whose life was just full of struggle, and the music was just so loud throughout the whole episode. It was so distracting to me. It meant absolutely nothing compared with this guy's life. It was so out of context, it was ridiculous. I couldn't watch the whole episode because of it. The music literally ruined it. Now, that's not Vivaldi's fault, and that's not really Max Richter's fault either. But when you've got these TV producers who go, everyone knows that piece, that's great. That's going to, you know, razz up the show for us. It's completely taken so out of context. And instead of, say, commissioning an edgy modern German composer to write the incidental music for the episode, they just churn out Vivaldi / Max Richter. What does it mean? It's not meaningless, and it's not thoughtful, and it's not creative, and it's not any of those things. So there,
it's out of copyright, so it's free to use.
Well, how much did they pay Max Richter, though? He's alive. His version of Vivaldi is not out of copyright. So there's my rant. I feel the same way about... Now, you might think I'm going off the track here, but I'm not. Hear me out. When you watch commercial television in Australia, you hear American pop songs from the 80s and 90s and the noughties, and that music is the soundtrack to our advertising. Now, that is an opportunity to commission bands, composers, living people, instead of paying for the rights of these really expensive pop songs to back, you know, a margarine ad or something like that. Like, what's that? What is the mentality there? It used to be an incredibly profitable thing to be a jingle writer as a television commercial music writer. Now it's practically non-existent. And it's the same phenomenon in classical music. It's like, oh, we're going to program something because it's a household name, instead of, here's our opportunity to show amazing music, even if it's other music from the Baroque. You know, there's a lot of music that we have never heard from the Baroque period, which is so completely awesome, you know.
Well, speaking of programming, we've already done an episode on that. That was episode 9.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you've thrown up a lot more, you know, things to think about and questions and stuff, which is, you're right, these pieces like Beethoven 5 and the Four Seasons and Tchaikovsky 5, and which is one that I don't like. Every time I play Tchaik 5, I'm reminded how much I love Tchaik 4. Thoroughly love the Fourth Symphony there. So it's just like from a musician's perspective, it's playing this one again. It's the same thing, and yes, there's only so much a conductor can do to, I don't know, I don't want to say make it their own, but conductors will conduct pieces differently. And then from an audience perspective, it's like if they're a musician, they've heard it again and again. And they might enjoy that. I certainly enjoy that with some pieces.
Yeah.
If you're a non-musician, you're like, oh, yeah, it's familiar. So because it's familiar, it's almost like a guaranteed sale or, getting applause after, unless it's performed really badly, depending on what it is.
Yeah. And there used to be this really clever thing that orchestras would do. They'd program the most famous symphony, but like the second piece on the program might be some modern composition. So you kind of slip it in there while no one's noticing, hoping that they won't complain too much. And that's always the way in my career. That's the way orchestras have had to program. You stick on something really exciting in terms of household name, and then you wedge something more modern or experimental in, which is kind of sad. And I think it underestimates the audience too. I think marketing departments of orchestras have a responsibility to plug the weird thing in such a way that people become really interested in it, instead of using the common thing to get people's attention. But anyway, that's definitely off the track. Sorry.
Yeah, programming's an interesting topic. But back to sort of like, and are there any others that you can think of where it's just like, I mean, I did my list and I didn't even think about Dvorak 9, which, by the way, I adore. I don't care how popular it is, how overplayed it is. I adore it. And then I think, like, it's so overplayed, but people realize if we have a Dvorak 9, there's 8 others, and only 8 is really played, but like it's not as much. And I've listened to all 9, and they're all great.
Yeah, that's right. And why just 9? Well, 9's a very interesting.
There's a story behind
historical, 9. Amazing kind of culmination of 2 cultures and all of that. So yeah, that's fun. But my one that I get into a lot of social awkwardness when I say I really don't like this piece. Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique. I'm so sorry, people out there who love that piece and who think Berlioz is a great genius. Sir Andrew Davis thinks Berlioz is a great genius, and I love Sir Andrew Davis, and not even he can convince me.
So what is it about this one? Tell me.
I can't. It's an irrational hatred. It's every time it comes up. Look, it could be that phenomenon I've spoken to you about before, where I don't hate the piece, but I don't like the way the conductor or the conductors of the last 100 years have interpreted it, and it's
tainted for
me.
It
gets really frustrating in my mind, knowing what period it comes from, knowing how orchestras now are looking at Beethoven, which is the same period. They're looking at Beethoven going, oh, we have to lighten up, we have to play more early music style, we have to do the right bowing and the right phrasing. And yet Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique comes up and no one has that discussion. They go right back to playing it really heavy with lots of vibrato, way too slow. So you know what? I probably don't hate that piece, but I don't like the way orchestras play it, thanks to the interpretations of early 20th century conductors.
So help me if anybody comments out there saying they don't like Hebrides Overture. I will delete the comment.
Oh, Mendelssohn is just stunning. I mean, you and I have joked a lot about how I hate the violin concerto, but I do not. I treat you. I don't hate it.
That was a 3 or so year-long joke we had going with that thing.
Well, again, it's the interpretation of it that's impossible now. It's been so smeared with the 20th century that it is literally impossible to play that piece the way Mendelssohn might have imagined it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one day I'll tell you my story, like the full story as to why I'm utterly obsessed with that concerto. I know people that just like, they roll their eyes at it because it's one of those overplayed concertos. You have your gripe about it with the way it's played. I just have from when I was a child, a connection to that piece, which is really geeky. But I understand. I totally understand. It was, people don't know this. He wrote 2 violin concertos, and the first one in D minor is what I see it as that in between piece of writing from a Mozart concerto to his Mendelssohn E minor, which was full-blown romantic. And that D minor one, in my opinion, sits in the middle. And it sort of like blends, like bridges the gap between those two styles of writing. And if you just, I'll link it. It's incredible.
Fantastic.
He was like, so that I look at his E minor and it's overplayed, and I'm really particular about what recordings I like and how things are how things are played. But
that was a very interesting period of time, because if you look at early Beethoven, anything, it's horrible. And then you look at Beethoven's late string quartets and you're like, this man is absolutely a revolutionary. It's just stunning what he was able to change in his lifestyle.
I think people forget that. I thought about this with Tchaikovsky, because Tchaikovsky symphonies, it's 4, 5, and 6. Oh yeah, sure, 4, 5, and 6. Yep, cool. What about 1, 2, and 3? And I asked you once, and you just were like, yeah, not everything that they all wrote was quote unquote good.
They're not born being able to do it. It's a craft that you practice. Even and also, Mozart had to practice.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you look at the span of or the catalogue of compositions from one composer, you can see the change in their writing, and people study that kind of thing, and I just think it's really interesting. So Mendelssohn Concerto, if that's one of your ones, which is it's definitely not one of mine, I can put on that third movement and I'm instantly happy.
The eye roll for me comes from a student saying, I really want to play the Mendelssohn, and I just know that the conversation about the bowings in the opening is going to go for about an hour and a half.
That was exactly me when I played it, and I came to you and said I really want to play Mendelssohn Concerto, and you probably did eye roll. And we did, and we went through that first page, and you bowed it, and then I went and bought a clean copy, because I have a few copies of that, and I went through it, and I'm just like, why did we agree? Like that one's hard.
I want to link. I'm going to link in the description the Victoria Mullova Baronreiter project that she's doing.
I love her.
There's this one little 30-second clip. She's showing the difference between one of the early 20th century editions and what bowings the violin editor put on it, compared to the bowings that Beethoven wrote. And through the release of this latest Baronreiter edition of Beethoven sonatas, she can demonstrate how unbelievably different it is when you change those bowings, and how the music is just transformed. When you start smearing your own bowings on something for comfort, that you're destroying the intentions of the composers, especially the romantic composers. So we're going to link that.
I just want to pause you on this, because this is a topic you've sort of like started talking about what we've got planned for another episode. Another big gripe of ours is bowings and phrasing. So I'm going to put a pin in that, because that is. There's a time and a place, and that is not today. But you make a really good point about, some people roll their eyes at this kind of repertoire because they've heard it before, they've played it a billion times, they're over it. Yeah, that's great. 5-1 resolution, awesome. And then you seem to have a bit of a gripe over the way,
stylistic,
not so much the piece, but the way it's been played. And I think that's something that non-musicians will hopefully now. Maybe they didn't think of that before, I've definitely rolled my eyes over, not the piece, but if I hear someone playing it a certain way, I go,
too heavy, too fast, too slow, no meaning to it.
I certainly heard the opening of the first movement of Tchaik 5 that Karajan was conducting, and it was so slow, I didn't listen, no.
This is usually what happened in the early 20th century. The conductors felt really profoundly about this music. They loved it so much. In Herbert von Karajan's case, it's part of his culture, and it's part of the way he resurrected the self-esteem of the German people after the Second World War. Yay, tick, love him, good job. But at the same time, he and others like him, Bernstein was another one, they didn't have access to that information we have now about stylistic stuff. They didn't care. They just had these scores, and they're like, wow, this is so profound. This is so incredible. And using the modern technology.
It's a hindsight thing. Sorry, it's a hindsight thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, I've grown up with all of those recordings. Furtwängler, Herbert von Karajan, all of these famous people that really did play a big part in saving classical music and bringing it into the 20th century. So again, tick, good job. Then the early music revolution comes, and at first it's like the 1960s in England, just mucking around with Renaissance weirdo hey nonny nonny instruments, and that's really cool. Love that. And then in the 90s was even more of a resurgence of, hang on a minute, what equipment did they use? And that extended all the way up to Brahms. Even some orchestras, which one was it, Stuttgart or something, that played a Mahler symphony with no vibrato.
Oh, what?
Yeah, like, so we're talking about people who really
looking
go
that up.
back to the source and go, did they use vibrato? When did they use vibrato? What kind of vibrato did they use? And some conductor, I wish I knew, again, we'll find out, we'll put it in the comments, in the description. But imagine hearing a Mahler symphony now, which is totally different speeds than what we're used to.
Imagine
And no vibrato.
Imagine this, the Adagio movement in Mahler 9.
Yeah.
The opening where it's all about the just like really dynamics, but oh my gosh, it's so hard to play that and sustain it and create a pure sound even with vibrato. It's a really hard wow.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll probably do another episode on this kind of thing because we are going off the track. But
Yeah.
let's just pull it back to, often people don't like music. If someone says, I really hate Bach, it's like, oh my God, you must play them an early music recording of Bach. You know, you have to show them maybe what Bach sort of heard, and maybe it'll make a bit more sense to you, and maybe you won't dislike it so much. So
yeah, I certainly will crap on about Zarathustra. I love Strauss, but that's the one that I'm just like, well, maybe if I just crap.
that's your piece that you don't like, but you like Strauss, right?
Yeah, but maybe I just need to sit down and actually find a recording that does it justice. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I need to study the score a little bit, because sometimes for me I have to look at the music and do multiple listening for a piece to hit me with, actually that's really quite awesome.
Yeah. And you really do listen to music. You really, like, you sent me what did you send me the other day? And I was just like, no, I don't like that. It was the Vietnam cello concerto, which I'd never heard. The last movement.
Yeah, the third movement of the A minor cello concerto.
To tell you the truth, I was thinking, how am I going to tell her I don't like it? Because, you know, like, you were all like, oh, this is so great. This is so great.
I
I'm
don't
like,
mind. No, I actually, you sent back, like, you gave me your feedback of it. I'm not going, how dare she?
No, I know,
not
you're
like a
good
piece
like
that
that.
I like.
Yeah.
Like, what? No, but you made some really interesting points. And it's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. But sometimes if I can just listen to stuff on the surface level, and go, yeah, I still like it for what it is. Like Beethoven 5, talk about overplayed and people rolling their eyes. I almost cry when the recapitulation happens in the second movement. and the melody goes through the orchestra and then ends up the octave with the first violin. I'm like, when I first played that for the first time, I teared up because, again, if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a nerd, just a little bit. But like, it's, and you know, when I'm sitting there in the audience and it's playing in the orchestra, I'm like slapping my friends next to me, going, "That's the bit that I like. That's the bit that I like."
Yeah.
That's me. So, but you know, yeah, you didn't have to like that cello concerto, but I liked your feedback. But I did send you another one after that, and you should listen to it.
Meh. I haven't got time. No. Honestly, I do try and respectfully communicate back with you when you send me something you're excited about. Who am I to, you know, make you feel bad about that? That's where this whole episode is a little bit mean. It's like, well, everyone can like whatever they want to like. It's completely fine. But I want people to know that if you don't like something, maybe it's the way it's presented to you. Maybe or maybe you just don't like it, and that's fine too, you know. My Beethoven that I love to love, even though I should hate it after playing it so many times, is 7. That is my all-time favourite. My crying moment is the slow movement, just the full-on build. And then every time I've played it, the conductor always wants to do this big rit at a particular point, like a big slowdown. And as soon as they do this big particular slowdown, I'm dead inside. I go cold. I'm like,
I think I'll listen to the whole cycle today.
Oh my God.
And if you think I'm joking, I will Instagram it, the whole thing. I got my favorite, speaking of the way things played, I will give a shout out. Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra did the whole cycle. That is, I'm sorry to other orchestras. I'm sorry, but TSO sealed it for me. Everything about those symphonies and how they recorded it, I adore. The Fifth Symphony, they added in a piano part, which I think was in an original manuscript or something.
Yeah.
And it's just talk about, that's it for me. There's those recordings. But I think what you said, which is a really good way to summarize this, to finish up this video, is that, yeah, you don't have to like a piece. You don't have to love everything if you're a classical musician. It's perfectly okay to really like the standards and the overplayed stuff, and maybe understand, why is it that I don't particularly like that? It might be the way you've played it. Like, I don't like that Bartók because I was in a really bad space when I had to play. Like, it wasn't fun for me. I was miserable the whole time. So it's sort of just, that's a bit,
It's got negative associations.
Yeah. But I just think it's interesting perspective from the musicians that week in, week out, play this repertoire. And it's like, if I have to play any more Mendelssohn or Mozart, or if I have to use all that vibrato or no vibrato, it's just like you put it onto the music, you scapegoat a little bit.
And that goes back to our episode, A Classical Musician's Creative. Now, usually we get frustrated because we don't have any creative control. So that's another point to it.
But yeah, so I have no doubt I will turn on the TV and there'll be an ad for something, and I don't know, Vivaldi Winter will be playing.
That's the one.
Or Bach G Major Prelude, which I adore. I'm fine with that. Or what else do I not like? Track 5, The Swan. I don't know. Pomp and Circumstance.
Listen, Pomp and Circumstance reminds me of The Goodies. If anyone's old enough out there to remember The Goodies, there was this one episode where Land of Hope and Glory came on, and I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And I was really young. So every time Pomp and Circumstance comes up and the slow bit, Land of Hope and Glory, I just think of The Goodies. So it's just such a positive.
Well, okay, I think of Fantasia, which is my favourite Disney classical, because it's Disney cartoons blended with classical music, and they did Pines of Rome, so I'm not complaining. But I do actually fast forward through that one. I just don't like it. But okay, questions to the listeners, right? I want to know, what are the pieces that you love to hate, or you hate to love, or something? Tell me. You know?
Absolutely. Put it in the comments. Awesome.
Now, again, if it's Hebrides, I will be deleting that comment.
So unfair. This is what Splitting Hairs is. It's just a dictatorship, and Annabelle's the dictator.
I took a producer credit, so yes.
Awesome. Right. Well, I think we're done here. Thank you for sharing your innermost thoughts with us all.
Yeah, jump onto Instagram. I'm going to do the whole cycle of Beethoven today.
Oh, looking forward to that one. All right. Bye. See ya.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Splitting Hairs. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and if you're listening on one of the audio-only platforms, jump over to YouTube where you can see more content and what we look like.
I'm the young one. Like, share, and subscribe, and we have all the social medias like normal people, so go and follow us there as well.
Awesome. Okay, bye.
Sup, bye.